We don't know what we know.
In D.C.
And NVIDIA having problems with AI advancements.
And the Fed will hold steady. Interest rates will stay the same after Fed Chair Jerome Powell elected not to cut interest rates. I'm sure Trump would have liked that. But hold on to your wallets because market share starts right now. Good afternoon and welcome into Market Shares. I'm Carson Fowler.
And I'm Sean Dempsey.
We begin now with our market update. The Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P 500 all ending the week in the green. The Dow, NASDAQ rather, up 622 points, 3.28% of what it was on Monday, Sean. So good week for the NASDAQ.
Very good week for the NASDAQ, up about 3%. As you can see on your screen there, the NASDAQ was down earlier this week, primarily due to significant drop in tech stocks, particularly NVIDIA, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But up on the week, especially today, because Apple had better than expected earnings report, which is a really big deal there, and then slight beats on revenue and good customer reactions to Apple AI, that new feature that they just rolled out recently later this past quarter. So it's kind of interesting to see, our companies starting to, use AI in the right way, and I know we'll get into that a little bit later on.
Yeah, Apple's CEO said that countries where Apple Intelligence is working is where they're seeing their best sales, and the S&P 500 up 25.5, just over 25.5 basis points, a 0.4% increase of where it was, trading about $6,101 a share, Sean.
Yeah, the S&P 500, slid on Wednesday after the Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged in its first policy decision. Fed left the funds rate between 4.25% to 4.5%. But in the past 5 days, as you can see, it's up just under 1%. But year to date, S&P is up 4%, and in the past year, it's up 26%. So great, performance there by the index. And the move upward for the S&P is mostly due, to good earnings reports from a lot of companies this week.
Yeah, good things to show for those two indexes. And the Dow Jones up 641 points, just under a 1.5% increase of where it was on Monday. Good week for the Dow. We mentioned Apple, kind of driving some of those earnings as they saw a dip earlier in the week, but finishing the green nonetheless.
Yep, you're completely right.
Now let's transition to our top movers of the week. Starting off, we have IBM, and Sean, I know you got a lot to say.
Yeah, IBM's a really interesting company, right? Because they started as sort of like an old computer company, and they've sort of transitioned to this new AI consulting business. So IBM stock is up about 14.5%. IBM surged 13% after hours Wednesday on the back of a strong fourth quarter earnings report. The move put the stock on pace for its first best day since 2000. So it's been almost 25 years since IBM has had a day like this. IBM's sort of trying to capitalize on this whole artificial intelligence move. So what they're trying to hone in on is this Watson X that they're starting to roll out. And basically what that is it's an artificial intelligence consulting agency. So it's teaching companies how to use AI better, which is super, super interesting.
Yeah, the IBM CEO, Arvind Krishna, said that IBM's AI products provide clients with a consistent and scalable AI foundation built on open source technology. And our next stock is Starbucks. Obviously, their CEO just transitioned, was the Chipotle CEO, and we saw some portions get shortened there. I wonder if their menu's getting shorter, Sean.
Yeah, no, it is getting shorter. They're roughly, reducing it by about 30%, CEO Brian Nichols said, which is super interesting. But the main thing that I know we talked about before the show is that their same-store sales fell by 4% compared to about 5.5%, which is what analysts expected, which is weird because you would think that if their same-store sales would go down, then the stock would go down, but that just simply wasn't the case because they did better than analysts expected.
Yeah, so essentially what Sean was saying, that they did poor financially, but just didn't do as poor as analysts expected. So their stock actually jumped almost 8% on Wednesday. And our last mover, Sean,
we got to
is
get
NVIDIA,
to
of course.
Arguably, the biggest story of the entire week, and it could be for this entire year if we keep talking about it. NVIDIA, their shares plunged about 17% before Monday's market opened, and they lost about $600 billion in market cap loss. It is the single biggest drop-off ever for a U.S. company. That market cap loss was, bigger than Coca-Cola's total market cap. The stock was at about, $142 a share. Now sits, as you can see on your screen, 124. It's because DeepSeek, this new Chinese AI, came out and they reported that it only took 2 months to make this AI version of ChatGPT, and it passed ChatGPT actually on the App Store to be the #1 free app
Yeah, a couple other data companies actually saw their stocks drop as well. Dell, Oracle, and Super Microcomputer fell about 8.5% as well. Well, we bring in our market shares analyst, Alex Burstein, now to further discuss what was really a wild week in AI.
Yeah,
Alex,
it
thanks for
seems
joining
like,
us.
of course, seems like every week it's a lot of AI, but this week especially with this new DeepSeek, it's like TikTok deja vu, except now it's artificial intelligence, so maybe a little more important.
Alex, let's jump into this conversation. What really is DeepSeek?
It's basically ChatGPT, and obviously there's a lot of different, there's Gemini, there's the Twitter one, there's all these different versions, but what makes DeepSeek so important is they're being able to do it with less chips, and obviously chips has been the name of the game, especially here in central New York. Micron and companies like that have been getting so much money to create these chips, but the problem is if a company can do them with less, it's going to be so much cheaper. That's why NVIDIA had that massive drop, because they're not going to be as needed as much. We're looking at half the number of chips needed possibly to create this DeepSeek technology. That's a big problem for the industry.
So Alex, let me kind of follow you up there. When you're talking about NVIDIA, is NVIDIA the only market effect that we've seen, or are other companies being affected?
Yeah, I mean, it's mainly been NVIDIA. It was interesting to see that NASDAQ recovered, but that's obviously the big tech one, and it took a major dump off with it. There's been some other companies, though, that have struggled. You look at Microsoft, namely their CEO, was a little bit positive after the DeepSeek news, and the industry didn't like that. He's saying that this is going to all equal out in the end and it'll be okay. The markets didn't love that. Microsoft took a big jump there as well. So there's been some issues across the board, but NVIDIA obviously mentioned $600 billion. It doesn't really top that.
Yes, this is kind of definitely shaking up, some political leaders in the United States. Trump especially called it a wake-up call for scientists in the United States, being a wake-up call against AI. Where does the U.S. stand from here? How concerned should they be about staying ahead in the AI race?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting place right now for the U.S. because they do have control of the industry. But as you mentioned, Trump, here's what he had to say a couple days ago about the current situation.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser focused on competing to win, because we have the greatest scientists in the world. Even Chinese leadership told me that.
And he went on to say, obviously, Silicon Valley is the place to be for artificial intelligence right now, which isn't all means pretty much true. But if you see what China's been able to do, and this is a rather new company with DeepSeek, this is only 2-3 years old. That's massive jumps they've been able to make in a short period of time. So China very quickly catching up to the U.S. So that's definitely a problem to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I feel like DeepSeek kind of just came out of nowhere.
Nowhere.
To be completely honest with you, I opened my phone one day and then I see, oh, okay, DeepSeek is the #1 selling app on the App Store.
I mean, it was #1 in the U.S., which is crazy.
Yeah, and it's just like coming out of nowhere, and now they can produce this, in 2 months. They're saying. I mean, it's going to be, interesting to see if, that's actually true. But I'm sure President Trump would have an answer to this question. But do you think this is sort of a national security issue?
It is, because it's similar in what we saw with TikTok and what we've seen with some of these Chinese corporations, where Americans are putting all their data into this, and there's ways to kind of scapegoat it. We saw David Sachs, who's the new White House czar, say that they are just able to kind of go around it. Here's what he had to say in a tweet earlier this week, kind of saying that it is a race, but he's going to be able to kind of get around it. But the thing is, right now with the U.S., they don't know what China's doing with this data. They don't know what these companies are doing with this data. And you can get very personal on AI, so they don't want to be having all these Americans give this information. So it's definitely something that they're looking out for.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of people we saw with NVIDIA stock that, it tanked. But I actually think this might accelerate the artificial intelligence race. I think companies are going to want to invest more in AI, especially in the United States.
The thing is, you can invest a lot in it, but the thing is, if they can do it cheaper, they will. And I think that's the big thing with DeepSeek right now, is they're finding ways to make cheap. And obviously, this has right now humanitarian effects, but there's also military effects, and they want to spend as little money as possible.
Thank you so much, Alex. A PSA Airlines flight crashes into a U.S. military helicopter, sending shockwaves through the aviation industry. All that and more when we come back on Market Shares.
Rolling.
Sound is speeding.
Can you slow that down, please? This is 28.1.
28.1. The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzz and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So, yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Wednesday's plane crash sent shockwaves through the aviation world and its stocks as well. Here to tell us more is Roman Verna.
Thanks, guys. Wednesday's crash marked the deadliest air disaster in U.S. history since November of 2001. American Eagle Flight 5342, operated by PSA Airlines, collided with a military helicopter over D.C.'s Reagan Airport, killing all 67 on board. The crash was a shock to the aviation industry, but stocks remained relatively stable. Lockheed Martin, the manufacturer of the Sikorsky helicopter, is down just over 7% on their 5-day, but this isn't anything too different from their year-to-date. And part of this is due to the fact that the reason for the crash is still largely unknown, whether it be on the air traffic controllers, pilots, or anything else. The National Transportation Safety Board says they have information but must verify before coming to a conclusion. Here's board member Todd Inman.
The question was, has there been human error or mechanical failure? We don't know what we know just yet. We do not know enough facts to be able to rule in or out human factor, mechanical factors. That is part of the NTSB investigative process. But I'd also like to reiterate, if we find something that is a significant issue that warrants immediate action, we will not hesitate to make those recommendations and make them public.
Yeah, and the ongoing investigation has left many wondering what the long-term effects will be for investors and air travel as a whole. American Airlines has lagged behind competitors on the year, and this quarter is projected to be no different. You can see that Delta leads the big three U.S. carriers, up nearly 15%. United follows, up almost 12%, and American trails the group, up only 0.18%. So guys, definitely a hard market to compete in long term here, and the crash isn't doing anything to help Americans' case.
Yeah, Roman, looks like it. Now, you talked a little bit about what the long-term effects might be, but what can we expect in the coming weeks?
Yeah, well, as that board member said, there's still a whole investigation ongoing, and that's where we're going to see a lot of this market volatility come from. Some people are saying it might be the airline's fault, some people are saying it might be the air traffic controller's fault, but the truth is we really don't know. President Trump and some of his cabinet picks have placed the blame on DEI hiring practices, saying that pilots and air traffic controllers were hired for their race and gender over their merit, but experts are saying that it's more of a problem of short staffing in the air traffic control industry.
And going back to that long term, is there any expected uptick in ridership on competing airlines now?
Yeah, that's definitely something we're going to be able to see in the coming weeks here. Delta and United, the two of the other big three U.S. carriers, always see a spike like this, or sometimes see a spike like this when something happens to another one of them. When people are buying tickets, the second thing, right after price is often the reputation of the carrier. And when we see something like safety come into play, the reputation can seriously take a hit no matter who's at fault for a crash. American's name just being on this airplane takes a big hit.
And Roman, while we've got you, can we expect any change in the level of trust among consumers in air travel as a whole? I mean, is that a real possibility?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just as we see increased ridership on other U.S. airlines, we're going to see a lot less ridership on air travel overall as people don't like to fly. That's all I have for now. Guys, back to you.
Thanks, Roman. On Wednesday, the Federal Reserve decided to keep interest rates steady after 3 straight months of cuts. However, President Trump is upset at this decision, blaming the Fed for driving inflation rates through the roof by wasting time on climate, DEI, and gender policy issues. Joining us in studio to talk more about it is market shares analyst Drew Matyasik. Drew?
Thanks, Sean. On Wednesday, the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell announced no new change in interest rates would be coming, a move that was highly anticipated by the Fed. According to the statement released by the Fed, their decision to keep interest rates steady was largely due to elevated inflation rates as the unemployment rates remain low and the labor market conditions are staying solid. During a news conference later that day, Jerome Powell added that the labor market was not a significant source of inflationary pressure and that real progress would have to be made on inflation before they consider any adjustments. President Trump, on the other hand, is upset that rates weren't cut, going to Truth Social later that day and saying that since the Fed wasn't going to make any progress on inflation, he will do it himself by unleashing American energy production, slash regulation, rebalance trade, and reignite American manufacturing. The president also blamed DEI, gender, and climate policy as distractions to the Fed that have caused the high inflation rates. Carson and Sean, back to you.
Thanks, Drew. We appreciate your report. It's been a long week with a lot of action coming out of the White House. Maybe the biggest piece of news is the federal funding freeze announced on Monday that was shortly rescinded shortly after. Here to walk us through all of the confusion is our reporter, Drew Albaugh. Drew.
Thanks, Carson. The chaos all started earlier this week when the White House Budget Office announced they would be rescinding certain federal grants to further align with President Trump's agenda. Although what and who this would affect remains unclear, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said the freeze would not affect assistance that goes directly to people, such as Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, and welfare benefits. Still, this created mass confusion and paranoia, leading to multiple lawsuits. Eventually, the mass chaos led the White House to rescind the order just hours after it was signed by President Trump. This comes after a judge temporarily halted the order on Tuesday. So that's that, right? Well, wrong. In a memo on Wednesday, the White House announced only the original memo calling for the freeze has been rescinded and not its efforts to review federal spending. So it's safe to say there's still a lot up in the air here, Carson and Sean.
Drew, thanks so much for joining us here at the desk. Drew, like you said earlier, the Fed has cut interest rates for 3 straight months before this. When can we expect to see the next cut?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens moving forward. But right now, the 2 previous cuts, you see it move down. Now this one, you remain steady. A lot of unknown, and that's really the storyline.
And the one thing we want to talk about, the federal grants that we've been discussing. The federal freeze that we've been discussing. Not necessarily federal grants and other programs, but what will be halted?
Yeah, so there's a lot of confusion, and that's also the storyline here. There's a lot of things such as DEI, tribal federal grants that go towards them. There's a lot of things that, although it's technically freezing right now, in the future, expect that still to be halted. Karoline Leavitt said in a press conference, she said that, look, there's still, the main issue behind this, that they paused it, the reason was not necessarily because they wanted to do it. It's because they were getting lawsuits left and right thrown at them, and that the, quote, fake media was against them. So there's a lot going into this issue.
And Drew, what should we kind of pay attention for in the coming days when related to this?
Yeah, there's not a lot known right now, and that's kind of the big issue. The big issue is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the White House right now, and there's a lot of unknown, and that's kind of creating mass paranoia, across all industries, and that's kind of also affecting these Fed rates.
And Drew, we'll turn to you on this one. Obviously, you mentioned, obviously the Fed remaining steady and not cutting interest rates. How much were tariffs a factor in the decision to, remain about that 4.5% percentage mark?
Definitely a big concern from the Fed. President Trump's tariffs is threats of 25% on Mexico, 30% on China, 25% again on Canada. These have a big impact on inflation rates in the nation. Right now, the Fed's goal is 1% for inflation rates before they can cut those interest rates. It's at 2.9 right now. So they're not even at a rate right now where they can cut those rates back down. And tariffs are only going to send inflation rates back up if the president does go ahead with it, which Howard Lutnick, his nominee for Secretary of Commerce, doubled down on that in his confirmation hearings just before that Fed meeting, saying he will be pushing those tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada. Huge impact on American inflation and the goods coming in from those countries.
And Drew, kind of bouncing off of that, what needs to happen before the next Fed meeting in March for there to be another slash in interest rates?
It's all about inflation, right? They said that the job market's, steady. Everything's solid in the economy. We're doing good right now, but inflation's too high. It's still too elevated for comfort. You compare the statement that came out from the Fed now with the one that came out with the last interest cut that happened, just before, just after the election, and you can see in there inflation was slashed out, and it said it's too elevated right now to make that cut. In that statement that happened with the last meeting, they said inflation was fine, they could cut it, job market was steady, everything was good. Inflation's just too high right now. We want to see it come down before they can make that next cut.
Thank you so much, Drew, for joining us, and Drew as well.
Andrew.
OpenAI unveiled ChatGPT Gov on Tuesday. It allows government agencies to feed non-public sensitive information into OpenAI's models. Since early 2024, over 90,000 government employees have used the AI for policy drafting, document translation, and code generation. The platform will be available soon for agencies in high security fields, including defense, law enforcement, and healthcare. OpenAI expects to begin testing within a month and a half.
And over 1,000 Google employees have signed a job security petition expressing concerns over layoffs and cost cutting. The petition calls for guaranteed severance, buyout options before layoffs, and more transparency from leadership over expanding AI infrastructure. Employees say that ongoing layoffs negatively impact worker morale, yet the company's stock remains just over 30% up year to date.
And when we come back, new legislation that could increase wages for New York food service workers to $17 an hour by 2028. Stay with us.
Welcome to my house. Everybody's pretty tired of each other. The walls were closing in. Clearly a case of too much family, too close, 24/7. If this sounds like your house, try going someplace new. YourLifeYourVoice.org. You'll find lots of ideas to help you handle the family stresses of being confined to close quarters. YourLifeYourVoice.org. It could help you find a little more breathing room.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Market Shares. Progressive New York lawmakers are looking to eliminate the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. Under this bill, employers would pay the full minimum wage on top of tips. Currently, food service workers can be paid as low as $10.35 an hour, with tips expected to make up that difference. While the minimum state's wage is $15.50, and in New York City it's $16.50, proponents argue the bill would address inequities for women and people of color. The proposed legislation would increase wages for food service workers from $16.50 to $17 an hour in New York City by 2028, with a gradual rollout across the state. And Melissa Fleischut, president of the New York State Restaurant Association says all of the higher prices are getting passed on to our consumers, so we simply have to have the room to change the business model and add up all those additional costs into menu prices.
Nearly 4 years ago, President Biden declared 50% of cars sold by 2030 would be fully electric. Now President Trump is pushing back on EV production in the U.S., stating Americans should be able to buy the car that they want. Trump plans to adjust emission standards set by the Environmental Protection Agency, also revise fuel economy requirements set by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. In order for Trump to change these policies, he will have to fight through Congress. This move by President Trump is an attempt to emphasize consumer choice.
And employees at Whole Foods in Philadelphia have cast a vote to unionize, marking a significant shift between workers and management at the Amazon-owned chain. This is the first successful unionization at Whole Foods since Amazon acquired the company in 2017 for over $13 billion. Here with the full breakdown is our Dylan Augustine. Dylan.
That's right. In my hometown of Philadelphia, this historic vote saw 130 workers in favor and 100 against. with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union now set to represent 300 employees at the Spring Garden location. This decision comes amid efforts growing by Amazon delivery workers and organizers demanding better pay, safer working conditions, and fairer schedules. The push for unionization at Whole Foods began last November when employers filed for a union election with the National Labor Relations Board. This was shortly followed by allegations from UFCW that Whole Foods management had engaged in aggressive anti-union campaigning. Wendell Young, president of UFC Local 1776, says, "This fight is far from over, but today's victory is an important step forward. We are ready to bring Whole Foods to the bargaining table to negotiate a fair first contract that reflects the workers' needs and priorities." It's important to note, though, that this isn't the first isolated incident. Over the last few years, there's been a noticeable upsurge in organizing efforts across Amazon's operations, from warehouse workers in Staten Island forming Amazon's first U.S. warehouse union to upcoming union elections in North Carolina. Employees are increasingly vocal about their rights. This Whole Foods union could potentially set a precedent for other stores within the chain of Amazon's global workforce. The new union comes after Whole Foods CEO Jason Blueshill took over an expanded role overseeing Amazon's worldwide grocery operations. As the story continues to unfold, all eyes will be on how negotiations progress forward and whether this will empower more workers at Whole Foods and beyond to advocate for their rights. This here could be a bellwether for the future of labor rights in America's evolving landscape. Back to you guys.
And when we come back, artificial intelligence models predict future fashion trends. Stay with us.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you eat stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
Welcome back to Market Shares. Like many clothing companies, Levi's describes themselves this past week as, quote, data rich, but information poor. That could all be changing. Google Cloud, a machine learning algorithm, found that baggy jeans are back across all consumer sectors, and that's what the data reflects on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a huge
I know
baggy
you like baggy jeans.
I do wear baggy jeans, and I know Carson, clowns me from time to time, but in my opinion, they're better than skinny jeans.
I'm like a skinny fit jeans. I mean, not like actually skinny jeans, but like, light fit.
Well, you've been telling me that you've been looking for a good pair of baggy jeans.
Have I been? Well,
you're done.
That's all the time we have. Well, actually, let's talk more about jeans, Sean. I like light wash jeans.
No, I'm a pro light wash jean connoisseur.
Do you have multiple pairs of jeans?
Yes.
Like
one
how many?
light, one dark, one tan. You have to have one for every outfit.
Jeans?
Yes, yeah.
I've got like a dark green. No, that's
What?
khakis. Those are khakis. Does Levi make khakis?
Yeah, they make khakis.
I don't know. I don't really.
Where do you shop for your
my
jeans?
Mom shops my stuff.
Oh, so you. Well,
You think any AI will be predicting any fashion?
yeah, they could probably make me an outfit.
You think DeepSeek would do it better than ChatGPT?
No.
No.
Actually, I have no idea. I mean, maybe in 10 years from now. Who knows? It's all crazy.
I think that's about all the time we have for you on this episode of Market Shares.
And I'm Sean Dempsey. Have a great night, Syracuse.